Welcome to this channel, which is a class on research methods by Dr. Lydia Wabugu. This is a class where we discuss everything social science research, from understanding the research discipline, research philosophy, the elements of scientific research, and the methodologies of conducting research. Feel free to ask any question regarding today's lesson on the comment section. Welcome. Welcome to our lesson today, where we shall be discussing the research process. And this is the process that is followed when we are conducting quantitative research. In our previous lesson, we have discussed the approaches, strategies used in mixed method research. In addition, we have discussed the methodological approaches, definition of MMR, strength and limitations of MMR, types of methodological triangulation, factors to consider when designing MMR, and finally we looked at the MMR designs, strategies, and approaches. So before we go on in this lesson today, let us familiarize ourselves with the learning outcome. So the outcome is to explain the process of conducting research, and we have said it is conducting quantitative research. In lesson 1, we defined research as a systematic, scientific, and objective search for knowledge. And we also said that research being systematic, it means that there are well-defined steps that are followed as you seek for answers to research problem. Therefore, our lesson today will be discussing the research process, and the research process is defined as a process of multiple scientific steps that are followed as you conduct research. Please note that each step is interlinked with other steps. There are researchers who advocate for 6-step process, while others advocate for 8-step process. This lesson will discuss the 8-step process. As we discuss these steps, please note that in lesson 15, we discussed the research process, all the steps followed while conducting qualitative research. That is why today we are looking at the steps followed when you are conducting quantitative research. So let us look at the 8 steps, and we shall discuss each in detail. The first one is formulating the research problem. The second one is extensive literature review. The third, developing the objectives, research questions, and hypotheses. The fourth is designing the research methodology. The fifth is developing the research proposal. 6, collecting and analyzing data. 7, interpreting, drawing conclusions, and making generalization. And finally, presentation of results. So we shall discuss each and every step in details. And we start with the first one, which is formulating the research problem or developing a research question. Remember, in lecture 1, we said that research is problem-driven. We conduct research because there is a problem. We do not go to the field to unearth a problem, but we go to the field because there is a problem. Therefore, the first step as you develop a quantitative research is to formulate the research problem. In lesson 6, we discussed sources of problems, and we mentioned some of them as the media, experience, discussion with experts, etc. But remember, we said that a problem needs to be documented, and the documentation must be from a credible source. So even as we talk about experience as one of the sources of a research problem, we must be careful to move it to a level where we can have data regarding the problem or the problem is documented. So in this process, the problem that will be formulated needs to be from an area of interest where the researcher has some basic knowledge regarding the problem. In this stage 1, please note that the problem is broad and not well refined. And that is why you move to step 2, where you conduct extensive literature review to redefine the problem. So this stage takes you to literature. It is also called or referred to as preliminary literature review. This is where you find out what others have written in relation to your problem. And this helps you to acquire knowledge on current theories related to the problem you have identified. Why is this stage important? It helps the researcher to identify the variables of the study more clearly, the indicators that will measure the variables, and the knowledge gap that the current study seeks to fill. It is also at this stage where the researcher is able to state the problem, what we called in lesson 6, statement of the problem. We said that statement of the problem makes a case or why the problem warrants to be investigated. So it is only after you go to literature, find out what others have written about the area that you want to investigate, that you are able to clearly define the objectives of the study, the indicators to measure those variables, and also identify knowledge gap. With now variables being clear, we now move to step 3. This is where we develop objectives, research questions, and hypotheses to be tested. In lesson 7, we discussed how to state objectives, research questions, and hypotheses. Just as a way of reminding ourselves, we said that objectives are the focus of the study and they should be SMART. We said research questions are investigative questions that the research study seeks to answer. And we said hypotheses are tentative answers to the research problem, which is expressed in the form of a clearly stated relation between the IV and the DV. Once the objectives, research questions, and hypotheses are clear, we move to step 4. This is where we design the research methodology. In lesson 17, we defined research methodology as an explanation of the strategies that the researcher employs when they are sampling, when they are determining methods of data collection, and determining the methods of data analysis that helps them to answer the research problem and all the related philosophical assumptions. It is therefore at this stage 4 where the researcher selects the research design, sampling design, measurement design based on the philosophy and the approach selected for the study. It is also at this stage where the measuring instruments, or what we call research tools, are developed. Remember, we have discussed part of the research methodology in lesson 12 to 17 when we discussed the quantitative, qualitative, and mixed method designs or approaches. In our coming lessons, we shall move to discuss sampling designs and also measurement designs. But before we get there, we will look at how do we develop the research methodology in step 4? So we have said the methodology is based on the approach and the philosophy, and it encompasses the research design, sampling design, measurement designs, and methods of data analysis. We shall discuss analysis later on, but we will ask ourselves, if a study is quantitative, which designs do we use? We said we have 3 main quantitative designs, and these are survey, ex post facto, and experimental. The sampling designs that we use for quantitative research is random or probability sampling techniques that we shall discuss later. And the measurement designs that we use are the tools that will enable you to collect numerical data. If your study is qualitative, then the research designs you'll select from the 5 that we discussed: case study, biography, phenomenology, grounded theory, and ethnography. The sampling designs in qualitative are non-random or non-probability sampling designs, and the measurement designs that we use is the researcher as the key instrument assisted by unstructured tools. This again we shall discuss in the coming lessons. Please note that as you think through the measurement design, you must ensure that they will yield data that is both valid and reliable. In other words, the instruments that you choose must be free of errors. And in our next lesson, we are going to discuss measurement errors before we move to validity and reliability of research instruments. After you have developed the methodology, you now develop the research proposal. This is the proposal that will allow you to apply for funding if need be, and also apply for research permit. So a research proposal is a document that spells out the researcher's intentions of carrying out the research. It can also be defined as a statement of intent that spells out a researcher's intentions of carrying out a research investigation in a specified area. If need be, the researchers normally use the research proposal developed to seek for funding from funding institutions based on the discipline. It is also the same document that you use to apply for permit. Remember, it is very unethical to conduct research without a research permit. So now we have our proposal developed. We move to step 6, where we collect and analyze data. Remember, in step 4, we determined the instruments used and we also developed them. So this is the point where we are now taking the instruments to the field to collect data. But before we take them to the main respondents, we need to pilot them. Piloting involves administering the instruments to a group that has similar characteristics as the main research group. This is aimed to determine whether the questions of research are ambiguous. After piloting and revision, the instrument is then administered to the main research group. Remember, the method of administration is dependent on the method of data collection. For instance, you may decide to email a questionnaire to your respondents, or you may decide to administer it face-to-face based on the time and the resources that you have. After collecting data, that data is cleaned, coded, and analyzed. Methods of data analysis are dependent on the philosophy and the approach that guided the study. Qualitative approach uses inductive analysis, while quantitative approach uses statistical analysis. Though we shall be discussing analysis later on, we will need to point out at this point that as you analyze quantitative data, you select from the two types of statistics. This is descriptive and inferential statistics. Again, the statistical tool to use is dependent on the scales of measurement that were discussed in lesson 5. What is descriptive? Descriptive analysis describes the characteristics of the sample from which data was collected. Please note that we are describing the characteristic of the sample, meaning that if your study analyzes data descriptively only, you may not generalize the findings to the population because descriptive describes the sample. Descriptive statistics are drawn from measures of central tendency, measures of variability, and measures of association or measures of relationship. Inferential statistics are the statistics that we use to test hypotheses. It is a measure of the confidence that we have in our descriptive statistics. Therefore, inferential statistics give meaning to the sample data and enables inferences to be made about the population from which the sample was drawn. That means it is only after you use inferential statistics that you can now generalize your data to the population. And it is because inferential statistics works on the assumption that samples were drawn from a normally distributed population among many others. There are two types of tests. We have parametric tests for continuous data and non-parametric tests for categorical data. Step 7 is interpretation, drawing conclusions, and now making generalization based on the findings of the study. So after analysis, data is interpreted to make it meaningful to the audience of the research work. From the findings reported, the researcher is able to draw conclusions, make recommendations, make suggestions for further research, and generalize to the population. The validity of generalization may be threatened by two kinds of statistical errors. And the two are selection or bias error, which occurs when the sample is not representative, and random error, which occurs when the sampling design is flawed. In our next lesson, we are going to discuss measurement errors. The final step is to prepare the report or you present the findings. Research report is again dependent on the philosophy in which the study is anchored on. A quantitative research report is mainly statistical, while a qualitative research report is mainly narrative. And with that, we have come to the end of lesson 18. In this lesson, we have discussed the process of conducting quantitative research. And the reason why these steps are followed when conducting quantitative research is because the plan for conducting quantitative research is not as emergent like we have in qualitative research. So we have discussed the steps followed in qualitative research in lesson 15. So in our next lesson, we are going to discuss measurement errors. Thank you for being part of this class today. I hope the class was helpful. Feel free to comment, like and share this video with your friends. And please subscribe to this channel for you to watch more classes like we had today. Until the next lesson where we shall discuss errors in measurement, it's bye for now.